It was over the weekend. I submitted a couple different versions of the plan to the committee and the board of directors to look at and see what their thoughts were. Under our current plan, it said we would close in the old red state, but the plan needed updated. And what we did was, in the meantime, we have two options to present tonight. One, you can close under the current plan, or two, I developed a plan that is more reflective of the number of cases we are having here in the Indiana Area School District. As you know, we had one case. And up front, I want to acknowledge the fact that I think our nurses and our principals did an amazing job, but there was some contention with regards to the quarantining of a classroom or another classrooms. And I want to explain that up front so we're on the same page. The district does not have the authority to quarantine or take anyone off quarantine. Only the Department of Health does that. And as we're all going through this is some things that we have to work out as far as making sure families are better informed, better aware. And I have to own that and make that better myself. But as we continue to open up, there's going to be these type of issues where we have cases. So what we did, Mr. Kerr, for the committee to look at tonight is try to revamp our health and safety plan to reflect more so our current issues and the current number of cases. Because it's no surprise when IUP came back, IUP had a pretty big impact on the number of cases in the county and in our community. And it's hard to, not to take that into consideration when looking at our plan. So what we did, sir, was we created an updated version of health and safety plan for the committee to look at tonight that looks at the number of cases the school gets. Because I think it's important to note for the community, we only have one case so far in the district. And that's not to say more won't come, but what we did was we created a plan that's more reflective of where we're at as far as our numbers. And our plan is also aligned to the best evidence. When you look at the mathematical report that I shared with the board of directors, it tells you very clearly the best plan, rather than closing, is to stay in the hybrid model, and our plan reflects that. And additionally, what we did there, also talked to our local health experts, in this case, Dr. Shannon. Now, I have to be clear with the committee. What we're doing now is we are looking at the data at IUP, and we placed the pre-student teachers out. They're no longer welcome in our building for the next 2 weeks. We had a meeting with the student teachers today and other partners, explaining to them the importance of let's do the right thing in the community. Let's be adults. Let's be responsible. And if their numbers get the worst, I reserve the right to put them on a moratorium for 2 weeks. And I didn't do that to hurt them or our partnership, because we value what we have with them. But we did it, though, to try to really hold them accountable for what they're doing. If we know the rates are coming from IUP and the high infection rates and new cases are coming from there, we wanted to create a sense of urgency with them that made sure they understood about their responsibility. Because I don't know if it's the right thing to punish all 7 county schools if we know a great deal of cases are coming from IUP. So what our health and safety plan does, it puts a metric in place that it's aligned to the Department of Health that will allow us to stay open, but monitor ourselves in a way that is reflective of the recommendations they gave us. And I'll pull up a screen to show you the metric we created that's included in our plan, and then everyone can look at that and then give their feedback. Ultimately, I'm sorry, I can't present. I did email this to you previously. Ultimately, Mr. Kerr, what I need to know from the board is, do you feel comfortable working on the plan I sent you, and we can reapprove it next Monday, or you have the alternative, which is the original plan? What we did again, though, sir, was create a plan that's aligned to the best evidence, aligned to the recommendations of the Department of Health and our local doctor, but we had to take into context our numbers and our data. So what we excluded from that was the IUP case transmission rate, the community transmission rate. It allows us to stay open and allows us to be able to do what we think we need to do. And Randy gave me permission now to present, and I'll show that screen, and the board can look at and decide how they want to move forward. So give me 1 second. I'm hopeful this will appear here in a second. I don't know if it's going to show up or not. Give me 1 second, Mr. Kerr. I apologize. I don't know why it's not working. Let me try another avenue. So what you see in front of you is our framework that we would utilize in whether or not to make a determination that we stay open or close. And again, Mr. Kerr, I think it's important for this community to realize that it's a still conservative and abundance of care is taken into consideration when looking at this approach. So what it says is one person identified in 14 days. It tells you what we're going to do, 2 to 4, and then 5 plus. And I want the committee to know and the public to know this is still aligned with the Department of Health's recommendation. But what it does is takes our numbers into context and makes it more relative and important to us. And it's also important for the committee to know when you look at this number, sir, what you're doing here is it's going by building. So, for example, we know we had one case in Ben Franklin. If we get another case, we're up to 2 to 4. Depending on the recommendation of the Department of Health, we may have to close that building for anywhere 3 to 7 days. Now, with that said, sir, it's not set in stone either because context matters. For example, if we have a teacher who's one of our synchronous teachers teaching online all day and she's not around kids, then there may be some leeway there and some flexibility. This is a framework, a guidepost that we're using. Ultimately, it's Department of Health's recommendation, but this is something to give families an idea of how we're going to go and how we're going to operate. Because if you don't, and you go by the community transmission rate, which we know is impacted and inflated by IUP's numbers, then the recommendation is to close. What we're trying to do is take things into context, allow us to stay open, allow our kids to get an education in a safe and secure manner. Our teachers are doing a great job. We can always improve, and that includes me, in making sure we're following adherence to the policies. But this policy or this plan, this framework does give us the flexibility. It is still aligned with the best evidence. It's still aligned with our doctor at their local level, but it does take into context what we're dealing with at our rate, meaning the amount of transmission and spread in our schools. Now, it can change tomorrow, but it gives us a nice framework that's still conservative in nature and aligned to Department of Health. So I know I spewed a lot, and I was redundant in purpose because I want everyone to understand what we're trying to do here. So with that said, Mr. Kerr, I'll defer to you and the committee for questions, sir.
Sure. First, thanks. I think you really made a wagon wheel approach to this, which with each spoke having all kinds of experts and research and resources available to you. And that wheel's going to keep rolling. And each time we hit a bump, you're going to adjust using all those resources. And in saying that, you mentioned about IUP, and it's hard to solve a problem when we don't have control over the problem, which, you hate to call out IUP, but that sort of seems to be something that we do need to acknowledge. Is there anything else we can do that would directly help us with IUP?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mr. Kerr. And we had a great meeting today, myself, the principals, and Mr. Heinrich, with Dr. Laura Lukahans and her team. And I got to tell you, they're on board. They understand it. They're doing the best they can to create awareness. And that's why I decided, if necessary, we'll do the 2-week moratorium if we see rates continue, because, we have to hold ourselves accountable and them accountable and not put ourselves in a dangerous position. So what we did at this point, again, the pre-student teachers are all on a 2-week moratorium. The literacy experts and our speech people, they're usually your upperclassmen, a little bit more responsible. And I don't want to be mean when I say that, but they're a little bit more prepared for the real world. So we're going to continue to allow them in. And then the next on the list was the student teachers. So we met about 75 people and explained to them, you're being a professional all the time. You don't get to pick and choose when you're professional. So we expect you to conduct yourself in a good manner and be a responsible manner. And then what we added to that, Mr. Kerr, was an additional daily screener that scrutinizes a little bit more about their behaviors, their actions, and what they've done. And then we look at that and we see people aren't following that, or we get reports to the contrary, then we can take further action, because Pennsylvania Department of Education did allow student teachers to complete their student teacher hours remotely if need be. We're just trying to continue a good partnership, but make sure there's some structure and a framework in place that everyone clearly understands and can follow by. And I will say again, Dr. Laura Lukahans has been nothing but receptive, responsible, and appreciative of what we're trying to do. And she's been a real good teammate.
Yeah, and I think from what I'm reading, and I have not had any personal interaction, but I think the IUP does understand that what they do impacts just not them, but the whole county, correct? I mean, it could impact all the school districts in the whole county.
It does, sir. When you look at the community spread transmission rate, that's based on a county incident, a county rate, and that does impact everyone. And it's hard to look at our parents and say, close if you only have one case out of 3,000 kids. Now, the board has that right. And if that's the decision the board makes, I'll run that. But right now, I think we have to look at more context, more building level. And that's not to say that we won't get more cases, but at least we have a framework in which we can operate, and more importantly, our parents can operate under. Because my concern of just abruptly shutting down, parents would have no ability to make any determination or plan accordingly. So at least we could try to get this out tomorrow, so they can look at it and they can plan accordingly. It's a fine line what we're trying to balance between safety and also educating our kids. And what we know is the research is pretty clear. At most levels, online learning doesn't work, and we're trying to get our kids in safe. And we also put in stipulations where that hybrid model, if you look at the mathematical report, is what they're recommending, and that's exactly what we're doing. At the K-5 level, though, we have the social distancing in place, and it's working. Our people are doing a good job, our kids are doing a good job, and it doesn't, mean it mitigate any risk, right? It just helps eliminate some of the risk, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Right. I agree. And Tom, Barb, you have any questions?
I have one.
Go ahead, Barb.
Are there, when looking at our daily positivity rates and case increases, is there a chart with the statistics charted of what it would look like if you take IEP out of the equation for positivity and cases increasing?
That's a great question, Ms. Barker, and I requested that information from the Department of Health as well. I wanted to hear from them directly on what those numbers would look like. We had a meeting today with them in the Department of Education, and I asked them that question as well. And they said they can look into it and get back to me. I don't know if I'll get an answer or not. And they were very respectful. And I don't mean that to be curt. I just want to be honest with you. That's exactly what they responded to me with.
Mike, I think some of the data that I've seen, this is Uda, that I've seen breaks it down by zip code, but the challenge is not every student who is a student at IUP is living in 15705. So they may need to get some additional data to be able to tag those numbers as to whether or not those are IUP students or whether or not they're community members.
You're absolutely right. And I think, Ms. Uta, if I can clarify, I think my understanding is the 1705 only deals with the dorms. It does not deal with those people who live off campus, which is a big portion of a lot of, I don't know exactly number, but there is a portion of students who are living off campus.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that's a long answer, Ms. Barker, but I wanted to address it.
Yes, although off of Uda's statement, the kids living in 15701, not in the dorms, they're still shopping at our grocery stores, eating at our restaurants. So I'm very hesitant because they could be spreading it and not knowing it to our community. So as of right now, it looks like it's more contained to the IUP students and the IUP crowd, but I feel like at any point this could change and really be a community spreader that, tomorrow we could say, it hit, at this so-and-so business, all these workers, and at this business. But I'm hoping that the safety implications or safety protocols we have in place in our schools will work so that we don't have an outbreak in our schools.
No, you bring up a very good point, and I have to be clear with the public and everyone that we can't control for all that, right? We can only control what we can control, and what that is our policies, our procedures. But you bring up a very valid point about the restaurants and the different social events. You're absolutely right, and the problem with that is that can happen whether or not we're open or closed, and that's hard to control that. So the things we can control for, I think we have a good plan in place. I think our teachers and kids are doing a good job following to the best of their ability. Do we need to improve in some areas? Absolutely, we need to get better. But everyone's doing the best they can. But you're absolutely right, Barker. That spread can happen regardless, which even makes it more confusing why they're looking at increasing the restaurant rate to 50%. It's even more perplexing. But I can't control for those variables, and this board has to consider it. You bring up valid points.
Mike, you certainly should be congratulated in keeping at one case so far. We're into the year now, 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Yes, sir.
That's pretty remarkable. I think we have to deal with the facts that are on the table right now. And right now, it seems like we're keeping things under control. When they're no longer under control inside of our buildings, then I think we can react differently. But right now, I'm certainly in favor of keeping these kids in school as long as we can.
And Mr. Harley, the point you bring up is well taken. That's why we try to create a framework aligned with the Department of Health's recommendation that took in consideration our context. And you'll see it's very conservative too. And some parents and families may be upset that they think it's too conservative, but I think we have to be pretty clear and pretty aligned to the Department of Health in a lot of the ways in which we're doing, and they're the experts, not us. But these cases and these numbers can change, whether it's at home. Again, when you look at the Ben Franklin thing, that happened over the weekend, but it does impact the school, and we have to be aware of that and be flexible. And I apologize in advance for the angst and frustration it's going to cause parents, because when you decide to open like this at all, right, either full or hybrid, you're going to have this happen, right? The only way you're going to mitigate 100% of these issues as far as the spread is if you're closed. By being open, we're going to have to be flexible. We're going to have to over communicate with their families. And I apologize in advance for all the emails and notifications, but they need to be made aware of what's going on, and we're doing the best we can to update them and can keep them informed.
All right, Uta or Tamara, anything?
Yeah, I think it's really important to remember that there are lots of things we can't control, right? And even if we were only doing online learning, that doesn't mean that COVID stops and doesn't spread. And I really think it's important that the public understand that we're doing the best we can. We're trying to keep our kids in school if they've chosen to attend school in person. There are options. We provided options so that if students don't want to or don't feel comfortable attending in person, there's a variety of options to them. But there is a chance that at some point during the year, we're going to have to go to total remote learning, and families should start thinking about what their plan might look like. This isn't to have them panic, but it is just to kind of suggest that should this happen, what would you do? What are the options? And I think, Mike, on that same page as this chart, there's the reference to the program, the middle school program that the Y is doing, which is wonderful and definitely helps solve for some of that. But we're just trying to make people aware and, again, remind them that they're part of the same community, and hopefully we can all make good decisions and our kids can continue to learn from our teachers.
Ms. Lauer is absolutely right. And to answer Madam Vice President's question, I think she brings up a good point of questioning it. It's based on school. So, Madam Vice President, if we had another case at Ben Franklin this week, within 14 days, that would be our second case, then we'd have to talk to the Department of Health and see what they advise us as far as closure and how long. It would not apply to the rest of the district. So it is building specific, not district specific on that framework I provide you. And that's a great question. We're able to keep maintaining and moving things forward the best we can. So that's a great question. And I did see clarity and got it from the Department of Health.
Mike, this is Tom Harley again. I've been speaking with some of the coaches, and they've been pleased with how seriously their participants are taking the safety measures, and how they've really bought into it. So I think some of the work that we did earlier in the year with the safety protocols has really been paying off. And I congratulate the teams that are able to play.
Yeah, I think that's a point well taken. A lot of credits due to Miss Cinda, Miss Uta, Rob, and the team, and really working on that culture. And I got to be honest with you, we're working on that culture here, and we have some ways to improve, and we need to improve. And parents have reached out to me, so we need to get better. But we also need to recognize the fact that you're not going to prevent 100%, any spread or any case. We just have to do the best we can to maintain and move forward. And I got to tell you, Mr. Harley, in addition to those people you mentioned, our nurses have done an incredible job. Now, I have to defend them because they're acting out of abundance of care, being overcautious, but they should when we come to something this serious. And they've done a great job running the play, maintaining it, and having a firm line in the sand about, sending kids home if they're having symptoms. And I know that's tough and it's difficult sometimes, but everyone's doing their part. And we got to get better in some areas, and I own that, and I take full responsibility. But we're getting there, sir. It's one day at a time.
Tamara, you have anything?
Yes. So first of all, I really, kudos to everybody, but I do want to highlight something that Mike just said. Without Uta and Cinda and that team, a lot of this wouldn't have happened, especially the sports and the hours upon hours that Uta and Cinda have spent on specifically the sports and this reopening plan too is just beyond imaginable. So thank you. And I'm sure I speak for all the athletes and parents as well. You do need recognized. I do have a question. I'm sorry I popped on a bit late to this meeting, but there's a range for the middle situation on the slide that you have up. Will the Department of Health determine the number of days because there's a range?
Yes, that's a great question. What I did miss, Leaper, it's a great question. If you look at PD's original chart, they have low, moderate, and substantial, and their numbers vary on the how many cases it goes. So it is a range. They had 3 to 5 or 5 to 7. They will determine, and most likely it'll probably be 3, but I can't guarantee you. All I did was morph the 2 ranges together. That's all I did out of simplicity because I didn't know how they would rule, and I'm assuming they would dictate that. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so again, a lot of this is out of the board or the administration's control. We take direction from the state anytime a case is identified.
You can't. That's correct, and they will say it's local control, and they'll push back and say you have local control. My response to that is, I think what we're utilizing right now is responsible local control, but still adhering to a majority, if not all, of their recommendations. So I think at this point, I feel comfortable moving forward, and I feel comfortable allowing them to determine how long we would close in case there's an outbreak or another case.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
And thanks, Tamara, for acknowledging Uta and Cinda. And I agree with you 100%. They have really gone over and above. I know me doing a lot more than what I've been able to do. And I really appreciate what they've done too. So, Cinda?
Just reiterate what everybody else has said. We need to keep doing everything we can to be safe. Everybody needs to keep doing everything like they can, in school, out of school, in the community, everywhere. Parents really need to try to get prepared for the worst case scenario. The more prepared we are, the easier it's going to be. And I'd like to ask the community to please don't spread rumors. We know everybody is afraid, but when all the rumors start flying on Facebook, it gets very, very difficult. We're trying to be transparent. We're trying to be open. Call your building principal and ask what's going on. We'll tell you. And please know that the board is not responsible for telling people that they have to quarantine. We're just doing what we're being told by the Department of Health, and everybody needs to try to cooperate as much as possible to make it as easy as possible. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Cinda. Those were some good points. I agree. Tammy Blank.
I think that one of my children works at Dairy Queen, and there are people that come in regularly without masks, and the ones that do come in without masks, they regularly take off the masks. I mean, the ones that come in with masks take the masks off when they go to order so that the cashier can hear clearly what they're ordering. I'm afraid that, yeah, we're just starting to see how bad it could be considering how many teenagers work in the businesses around us. And if people don't start wearing their masks outside of the school as well, yeah, I think everybody's going to go to synchronous if they can't, if we're not careful. So, but yeah, if you guys hadn't done all that work, we would have been so in the weeds by now. It isn't funny. So, thank you so much for that.
Yeah, good comment, Tammy. Thank you, Madam Vice President. I think you're the last of the board members.
Thank you, Terry. No, I've asked my question. Thanks very much. It's a nice report, Mike. I know this has been frustrating, but I think we've done the best we can with a really, really difficult situation. So thank you. Thanks to everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Julia. I wanted to go through individually on this first topic because I think it's the most important one on the agenda. So, thanks for everybody's comments. I think, Mr. Vukovic, you have I think, agreement or consensus that, we want to keep the schools open, adjust the plan as needed, and we have confidence in you and your team in doing that. So do you need anything else from us on this first topic?
No, sir, I'm good. Thank you for the direction. We'll be sure to follow through, sir.
Okay, number 2, the swimming pool safety plan. There was some discussion on that at the previous committee meeting last week, I believe, and you guys were going to look into some things. So go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Kerr. Who we have on the line with us today is Mr. Neal. I saw was on the line. Dr. Minnick and Mr. Edmondson. They provided me with a safety plan that I'd allow them to give an opportunity to give you some time to discuss what that looks like. And there's some contractual changes that Jared would like to update the board on as well. So why don't we start with Jared? You could talk about the billing and the contract itself, and then we'll turn it over to Mr. Neal, Dr. Minnick, and Mr. Edmondson to talk about the safety plan itself. Jared, you want to go first, sir?
Mike, before Jared starts, there's a Jen Villa on the line too.
Okay.
He also is from the Y and knows a little bit about what's going on.
Okay. Well, Jen, I apologize. We'll include you as well, Jen. My deepest apologies. Jared, go ahead, sir.
Sure. The changes that we made to the contract was, and Eric and Jen and I worked together on it, was instead of the format that we've used for the past couple of years, where we bill kind of a monthly rate, but we take the total charge for the school year and just divide it by, I think, 6 months. What we did this year was we changed that, and now we're just going to take the hourly rate and actually bill at the end of the month for actual time that the YMCA provided a lifeguard. Because we know this year could be kind of volatile, where we could be shut down for a week, shut down for a couple months, or we may at times choose not to have swim class at all for certain periods of time. So it's going to be a very kind of inconsistent year, unlike the past years where we've been doing this. So like I said, the real change to the contract this year is just that instead of dividing the yearly payment up over 6 months, we're just billing on a monthly basis for actual time the lifeguard was in the building, giving us some flexibility.
Thanks, Mr. Cronauer. And if it's okay with you, Mr. Kerr, we'll turn over Miss Jen, Mr. Eric, and Dr. Minnick and Mr. Edmondson. They can go for there, and then if there are any questions, we'll address them at the end, if that's okay with you, sir.
Sounds good.
Okay. Dr. Minnick, do you mind if I start with Ms. Jen Villa and Eric Neal, or do you want to go first, sir? Jen, can I turn it over to you and Eric? Is that okay? And I apologize for omitting you. I did not know you were in the line. I apologize.
That's no problem. I don't really have anything to add, other than what Jared added. I think it will work out well to do it that way. I don't know if Eric has anything additional. I know I provided a bunch of documents to Mrs. Konitsky, the health and phys ed teacher at the junior high, in regards to safety, in and around aquatics area. So hopefully she was able to get some good information from there to come up with their plan.
Well, how about this? After Eric speaks, we'll turn over to Dr. Minnick to give an overview of the safety plan. And then maybe, Jen, you and Eric can elaborate or clarify anything that we may have made a mistake on. Fair enough?
Sure.
Eric, you want to go first, then we'll turn over to Dr. Minnick.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, sir.
Yeah. Jared and Jen captured everything. The rate that we've used probably for the past 5 or 6 years is the same rate from an hourly perspective. But with all of the uncertainty, we're just going to bill in arrears instead of leveling the payments out like we have done in the past several years.
All right. Thank you, sir. Dr. Minnick, do you mind going over safety plan in some detail? Because I know that's what we discussed last week. And I saw the notes that you and Kevin had. You mind going over that and giving us a little breakdown for the committee to understand what that looks like, sir? Dr. Minnick, I can't hear you, sir. I apologize. No one else? There you go. You're doing something now. That made it. Try saying something now, Mike.
We can see you now. Still can't hear you.
Mike, you want to log off and try getting back on, and what we can do is we can go to the next item And then if that's okay with you, Mr. Kerr, to keep things moving, we could talk about East Pike entry update and see if Mike's able to get back on, and we can go from there.
Mike, before you jump off of this,
Yes, sir.
the Y had asked for use of the pool in the afternoons, weekends. That needs to be brought up. Their use of the pool after hours, the junior high pool.
Okay, I'm assuming they submitted a facility use policy, and that would go through Jared. Jared, do you have that available? Are you aware of that, Jared?
I was not aware of that. I don't have a facility use form for them.
So I think if Mr. Neal just submits that, that can be handled through the business office, if that's okay with everyone.
Is there does the board have a problem with the use of the pool by the Y? I think that's where the conversation stopped last time.
Is that included in the safety plan that was developed, or is the Y going to develop a safety plan that'll take care of their use?
I would assume that the pool safety plan would be the same for whoever's using the pool. But Eric, can you address that?
Yeah, since it's your facility and your building, we would follow your protocols.
Okay. The difficulty right now
would be with how we provide lifeguards and supervise the pool. That would be the same as we would typically do that, and we would follow that from our perspective. But based on whatever the district has determined is the appropriate way for us to manage those sorts of things in this particular time, we would follow your protocol for a safety plan there. Jen, do you have any feedback on that?
I would just like an opportunity to review the plan before. I mean, we've been operating an aquatic facility under these guidelines since June. So I would just want to see it and make sure it's in line with what we've been doing as well.
Good point, Jen.
Can I ask a question? How many outbreaks have you had at the Y since June?
We've not had any.
Okay, because my mother takes swimming there, and I know she said you guys were closed down for a couple of weeks because someone had COVID.
We have not closed at all. So she might have a misunderstanding. We've had 2 people that have tested positive, but they were in outside group exercise classes. But it hasn't spread at all.
Okay.
Well, let's go back to Dr. Minnick if we can hear you. And it sounds like you'll need to submit that request through the business office. And then if we review and approve this plan, then it could be provided to the Y for them to review it. And then it can be discussed at a future committee meeting.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and jump in then, if that's okay. Well, I'm happy Mrs. Vila and Mr. Neal are present tonight. We did ask our health and phys ed teachers to reach out to the YMCA and gauge our thoughts with a safety plan for the pool based on the practices that they use. And it is reassuring to know that they follow the guidelines set forth by USA Swimming. So our safety plan is pretty much summarized by 5 or 6 bullet points. First and foremost, before we get into those, we do emphasize that students wear masks coming to and from the pool area and that they socially distance. Our group sizes, because of the hybrid model that we're running, really are not an issue. However, we are going to practice social distancing in the pool. Upon entry, students will enter through the pool into the pool area through one entrance and exit the opposite entrance, so that we are directing traffic in a one directional pattern, and that is taken from the notes that Mrs. Vila provided for us. We will need to utilize the locker rooms, of course, for students to change, since unlike the Y, kids can't show up at the pool dressed in their suits and leave in their suits. So we will spread kids out accordingly, only letting a couple of kids at a time into the locker room to change and then exit into the pool area. We can limit or rather manage the social distancing in the pool by limiting the number of students per lane. We believe that if we limit to only 2 people per lane, we should be able to, from opposite ends, we should be able to manage the group sizes. all the adults in the room, basically the lifeguard and the teacher, would be required to wear a mask if they're interacting with our students. But if they are elevated up on the deck and in a safe distance away, it may be up to their discretion to remove the mask, but we're recommending that they maintain the mask, such as that's consistent with what we're asking our teachers to do. But it is a much larger space too, so it's not like a typical classroom space. Students again are asked to wear masks when they're in common areas such as the locker room, even though we're limiting the number at one time in the locker room and while they're up on the deck. But they will be permitted to remove their masks when they enter the water. And of course, the facility gets cleaned on a daily basis when we are facilitating the swimming pool as part of our health and phys ed program. Our afternoon and evening custodians will be cleaning the pool deck, the railings, certainly in the locker rooms upon the completion of the school day. All of this is consistent with the recommendations of USA Swimming and based on the interaction between our HPE teacher, Mrs. Kanitsky, and Mr. Damon, along with Mrs. Vila from the Y. So I'm happy to try to answer any questions at this point if you have them.
And thanks, Dr. Minnick. I guess my question is, did the athletic committee review the plan yet?
Not to my knowledge. We're because we haven't actually started using the pool at this point. We're prepared to present these items to the committee, but at this point in time, we have not yet done so.
And I'm assuming that'll be done, right, Mr.? Is that committee reviewing all athletic plans? It's not really a extracurricular activity.
Yeah, I'm not sure that our committee would take that, Mr. Kerr, as it's an academic function right now. That committee is specifically for athletics and extracurricular activities. But I guess when the swimming team submitted a safety plan, but this would really fall under this committee right here, the Buildings and Grounds Committee. Do you agree, Mr. Vukovic?
I do. And Mr. Kerr, I don't say this to be curt. We don't ask people if we could teach math. This is the same thing as a subject, to me, an academic subject. So what I'd recommend is if the board feels comfortable with the plan, I could add it in our safety plan when we reapprove that on Monday, that it's in this so everyone understands. I don't want to burden Mr. Heinrich, Ms. Cinda, Ms. Uta's committee too much. This is, to me, this is a curriculum decision. This is no different than teaching math or English, but there still needs to be protocols in place. Like we did the same thing with driver's ed or course. And respectfully, sir, I'd like us to keep it in that committee if that's okay with you, sir.
Well, except for one question I have now that you brought up the swim team. I would think the two plans should align.
May I jump in?
Yeah.
So yeah, Terry, I thought so too. But the swim team does not use the pool at the junior high at all. So therefore that doesn't work. So
Okay.
A couple of things. I would like to see the YMCA's plan, if we could have a copy of that. And this plan for our pool, yes, should go in the district health and safety plan. And I think it would have been in there earlier, but I don't think any of us really knew that the swimming pool was repaired and was going to be up and available. So otherwise, I think we would have been pushing for that to be in the plan. The one comment additionally too, I'd like to see Dr. Minnick's plan in writing before we do much more discussion, because one of the things that he said already this evening seems to me to be in direct opposition to what we have in our health and safety plan. And that is that adults will wear masks at all times in the buildings. There's no more social distancing clause for wearing masks inside the buildings. So we need to stick with what we have planned and do it without fail. So I'd like to see all of those things.
And that's a good point, Ms. Cinda. We can do that. What we'll do is I can work with Dr. Minnick, Mr. Heinrich, get that in the health and safety plan, get that out as early as tomorrow, and then board can take action on Monday night, and we can work on all that. That's not a big deal at all. We can handle that.
Dr. Minnick, when you said that the students would be asked to wear masks, you meant that they'd be required to wear masks. Is that the better?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Okay.
I don't know if my microphone's on. Yeah. I apologize to the committee for the choice of words, because I am reading. I realize I'm reading off of notes that were recommendations based on the dialogue that we had. This has not obviously been in a formalized format yet, but of course we want to adhere to our own health and safety plan, and requiring the masks. That was a misspeak on my part, and of course the USA swimming guidelines would be applied within the those of our own health and safety plan accordingly.
Okay,
But
thanks.
we're not going to say that we're going to do USA swimming guidelines only. If we've always gone with the idea that if our guidelines are more stringent, we'll go with our guidelines, because we want to err on the side of caution at all times with it.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, of course.
I have a couple questions.
Go ahead, Barb.
Will the students still be able to shower after swimming?
Our shower facilities are certainly available. Yes, is the answer.
And so a typical period's about 41 minutes, I think, give or take. And when you have locker room change times, I believe 6 minutes in the beginning and 10 minutes at the end, it leaves very little time for actual swimming, 20 to 25 minutes. And if you stagger that, I'm really hesitant that you could actually have a curriculum program in place for swimming, staggering students coming in and out of the pool, unless you are only taking, one gym teacher would have a larger class, and versus having the two gym teachers, splitting them up. And my other question would be, will swimming, if you do swimming, will it be co-ed or not? I know 1 year it wasn't, 1 year it was.
Well, I wouldn't say that that's been decided at this point. In the past, as recently as last year, it has been co-ed. And if I'm understanding your first point, if I frame that as a question, I'm not sure I heard the question in there. But if I'm framing what you said as a question, how long is the actual instructional time? I think that's what if there's a way to make better use of the designated times we have per period by it either co-ed or not, we are playing around with the schedules in both the gym classes in a way to not only distribute the kids in a safe manner, but utilize the spaces that are available to us for phys ed. So we haven't either decided about the possibility that it could be co-ed or not at this point. And I can't answer how much instructional time from a period would actually be in the pool. I can only say that, managing the distancing and the spacing would take probably a little bit more of a bite out of the typical length of a period. But I'm not so sure that it would take so much that it wouldn't still make it worthwhile to utilize the pool.
Dr. Mimic, can I jump in real quick?
Sure.
I just wanted to restate too, just to give you an idea. Well, I spoke to Kelly and Matt today. We had some lengthy discussions on what numbers we're talking about. And I know it was mentioned, but because of the hybrid model with 7th and 8th grade, we're looking at around, don't quote me with the number, but we're looking around 10 kids and whether it's 7th or 8th grade. So you may have at one time, 6 boys in the locker room, one time maybe 4 girls. So as far as transitioning time with 7th and 8th grade, are we going to promise it'll be perfect? No. But with those numbers, it really is manageable to get them safely in and out of the locker rooms, in the pool, social distance, and get, some form of swimming instruction during that time. Now, obviously, with our 6th graders, the numbers are a little bit higher, but still, manageable when you're separating the boys and the girls in the locker rooms. Certainly still manageable. I didn't want to point that out, that the numbers we're looking at for 7th and 8th grade is around that 10 total because of the hybrid model. So that would certainly help us manage, those transition times and getting a half decent amount of time in the pool.
Thanks, Kevin. Mr. Edmondson is correct. We spoke about this a couple of times now, and the numbers are, you're in the right ballpark, Kevin. The numbers are in like 8 to 10. I mean, they're very small for 7th and 8th grade. So I think not only is it manageable, I think for distancing, I think it's manageable to really maximize on the instructional value of utilizing that pool. Thanks for jumping in there, Kevin.
And my last question is, I don't know if Greg Trout's on the line. I wanted to ask about the type of ventilation system that was above the pool and how it's working and more about it.
Ms. Barker, I think he is on the line. Greg?
Yes. Yeah, we have it's called a pool pack, and it introduces and controls humidity through air conditioning and also using the boiler. It runs 24 hours a day. It never shuts off. The only time it's ever been shut off has been for repairs. So it runs continuously, and it does bring the outside air in as well too. Especially having a nice large space like that, it does help.
Any other board members have any questions?
I do. Oh, go ahead, Tamara. I'll go after you.
Go ahead, Julia. Go ahead, Julia.
Okay, thank you. Sometime I would like to have a discussion, not tonight, but on why we're waiting till junior high, because we have a pool. But we used to send the 4th grade, I think, into the YMCA itself for swimming lessons, which I thought was really great because you get them when they're young enough and less self-conscious about swimming to learn to do it. So I don't know if there's some wisdom in the future of sending the grade schools back over to the YMCA. I know it'd be difficult right now, but I certainly think that's something for buildings and grounds to consider in the future. I think it was the 4th grade. It just sounds to me like there's no real plan for swimming at the junior high. It sounds a little like you're flying by the seat of your pants, and that's understandable, but pretty hard for the board to approve this until somebody's approved a plan about how this is going to work, more specific with numbers and things like that. I had no idea I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Edmondson, for saying it's so few kids, but and I don't know if the YMCA is allowing people to shower or not. I've been going to MAC this pool this summer, and of course so it's a different situation. But nobody can teach swimming better than the YMCA. As a longtime board member out there in the past, nobody's better at that business than the Y. So I think any way that we can collaboratively work in getting a good junior high program, and I certainly have no objection if they want to open that pool open to the community on weekends or weeknights. I think the more you can get people in the water, the better off you are. It's a great all around activity for students to spend time in the community, to have family get-togethers, particularly in the winter. So thank you, but I don't think we're ready to vote yet. So if we were talking about voting on something Monday night, I don't know that I feel we're ready. Thanks.
I'm sorry, Julia. The thing for Monday night would be the contract with the Y, not the safety plan. The safety plan is an administrative item, and it needs to align with the district. So I think we are ready to vote on the contract.
Yeah, but I do think that, I mean, I have absolutely no problem with hiring the YMCA to come in and do our guarding, and I don't think we need to micromanage them. They've done it so many times before, and they're real pros. And I think I'm saying to you, I think swimming is always worth it. I do think it's important that those locker rooms can be used for kids to get the chlorine off them and the girls to be able to use hair dryers if they have long hair, because we don't want them walking around the hallways getting sick after swimming. So in terms of the execution of the swimming plan right now during COVID, I think we need to have a better report than we're getting right now about what's exactly going to happen here. I think I'm addressing what you're saying, Tom.
Yeah, I think so. It's the I want to separate out the contract with the safety plan, but at the same time, the administration needs to provide the safety plan and answer these questions. If they can do that by the following Monday here, then by all means, let's get it done. Okay.
Well, can we do it by Monday? Because we're going to need a briefing. And it doesn't sound like anybody's that. In fact, I don't hear a lot of interest in this, and I'm interested. So I don't know if you think you can be ready, Mike.
Yes, ma'am. I'll make sure we're ready. Yes, ma'am.
Tamara, you had a question?
Yeah. So I want to make sure that I understand this, that students will have to wear masks except when they're in the water. Is that correct, Dr. Minnick?
I'm sorry, I had a hard time getting to my microphone. That's correct. Students will be required to wear masks to and from the locker room up until the point where they enter the water. Yes.
So if there's, okay. So when they get to the water, where are they going to put their mask?
Well, there are places around the outside of the pool. There are benches around the outside of the pool, and again, we're not talking about 20 or 30 kids. We're talking anywhere from half a dozen to a dozen kids at a time. So there is bench seating around the one side of the pool, and we can arrange to have individual seats opposite of that bench seating.
Okay. And then will there be, I'm happy to hear that there's such small gym classes. For some reason, I did not think that they were that small. I knew they were smaller, but so will there be any time when students are not in the pool? Will they be standing at the edges of the pool at any time? Like, do they do a lap and get out and then the next person jumps in and they, I'm not sure how it works, but if they are they then going to be crossing paths unmasked? That's my concern. At any time in the pool, if they're crossing paths unmasked. So I guess I'm going to echo Cinda and maybe Julia's comments that I would like to see something specific, and I don't want to micromanage, but I guess I don't have an understanding of what it looks like. Although I do recognize that 10 kids isn't a lot. I don't even know how many lanes that pool has. So, and then the other thing, just because of, like Barb mentioned, there's not a whole lot of exercise time when you count for all of the other, the changing and the masking and the changing on both ends. Would there be an option to opt out of swimming for those proficient swimmers and just have gym class? I feel like that they would get more physical activity, which, and hopefully outside, as I believe that's our goal at this point, while the weather's nice, that the gym classes be outside. I think that I would rather see children outside being physically active than even spending 10 minutes changing and then being separated. And I just see the downtime as a detriment to kids who need to move. So I would like parents to be able to opt out if they have a proficient swimmer. And I guess that's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Tamara. Any other board members? Questions, comments?
I would also like to see the kids actually do swimming, because this may be the only opportunity they get for swimming lessons for some of them. But I agree with Tamara. If proficient swimmers and they're not going to get anything out of it. A gym class would be better. And if their safety is strong and Cinda and them think it'll work, I'll be more than happy to vote for it.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate, when one of the USA swim team guidelines, it also said no, like, do not be playing Marco Polo or games in the pool, strictly lap swimming. And that actually gives more strength to Tamara's comment about those who are proficient. They should be doing other things, because swimming should be strictly to lap swimming, learning how to swim, and not playing, because the act of playing on the pool could actually, potentially spread the virus more. That's why the guidelines say you shouldn't. And having a kid who had swimming last year, there were lots of times when they were allowed, play time versus actually swim time of learning how to swim.
I would be interested in just getting a report from our gym teachers at what grade. So we start teaching swimming in 6th grade. At what, how many children move on to 7th and 8th grade and without being proficient swimmers? And I've said this multiple times, Julia, I totally agree with you. 4th grade swimming went away, I believe, when the realignment happened. I think it is way too late to teach kids to swim in 6th grade. I think we need to really consider how we can bring 4th grade swimming back, if not 3rd grade swimming. But so
Yeah,
I would support.
Yeah, you're right. 3rd grade would be, I can't wrap my head around that we've got kids get this old not maybe knowing how to swim. You got to learn how to swim. It's like learning what poison ivy is. You got to be able to. You got to know. And you don't run up to strange dogs that you don't know. And you got to learn basic things. And swimming is one of them. Plus, it's a great joy. And Barb, I understand what you're saying, but it's hard not to have kids play in the water. I mean, it's just a natural part of the psyche of humankind. But anyway, that's not really the point.
I'd like to jump in a moment. One of the problems we're having during the pandemic is these pools have limited population that they're allowed. I think it's 25% of the capacity. I doubt the YMCA could take a 4th grade class at this point. So this is a discussion that we should have in the future when we're on the other side of this event.
Yeah, and I think we got to do more research to determine what age is the best to teach a child. It could be kindergarten, it could be 1st grade. So we don't know. Let's move that on. Any other board member comment?
Yes, I have a question for Dr. Minnick. Have you measured the locker room to see exactly how many students you can fit and have them socially distanced? And what are your plans for handling their belongings when they take off their clothes and go to swim? What are you doing with their belongings?
Our locker rooms have been measured. I can't tell you. I don't have those numbers right in front of me, but our rooms have been measured as part of our whole school evaluation prior to the start of the school year. And I would say that in order to appropriately social distance in those lockers, we would permit kids to use the lockers, but we would just have to spread out how many lockers in between every student that's using a locker.
And then what kind of cleaning protocols do you have in place for the lockers between classes when the next group of students comes in to use the locker?
Well, we would have the same protocols in place that we have for classrooms, ma'am.
So the lockers will be cleaned between classes?
Well, we have provided cleaning materials for our classrooms, but we cannot mandate that the classrooms are cleaned between every class. We can only provide materials be available for them to be cleaned.
So have you seen, I don't know if it's been released yet, have you seen the locker room protocol that the athletic department is using, where the locker rooms are changing rooms only and no student belongings will be left in the locker rooms and no students will use the lockers, that the belongings will be carried in a duffel bag with the student and spaced 6 feet apart, outside of the locker room, and then take them back in to change their clothes. I think you really need to consider that, because if they use those lockers, you're going to have to clean them. And I don't know how you're going to get a custodian or a teacher to go in there and clean those lockers between classes.
I am aware of the that protocol, ma'am. And the only thing that I would say would prevent us from using that is just determining where is the best place for the students to keep their duffel bags. I wouldn't have them bring it into the pool area just for the sake of, that the deck typically gets wet. But I think we could probably work out a plan with including our phys ed teachers to determine the place where they would be safe and out of the way of any traffic.
Terry, I see a great issue coming up for kids running for student council. If we don't have swimming, I'd be running for student council, running for president of the council, saying, we want swimming.
Yeah.
I mean, I see an opening here for an issue.
Yeah, I think everybody wants swimming, but the first and foremost issue is safety. And every situation that we've looked at, from chorus to driver's ed to football, it doesn't matter. When you start looking at it, you start finding all these other scenarios and things that you just never thought about. So
no, I have no problem with that, Cinda. I'm just saying, if I were over at the junior, I'd probably be running for student council. That's all.
That's good. And I would vote for you too. But the other thing, and the last thing I'm going to say is, I really, Mr. Harley said, go ahead and sign the contract because that really has nothing to do with it. That contract has to do with somebody being a lifeguard at our pool for our classes. And until that safety protocols, so the safety plan is in place, the contract is very much tied up with it, because if there's no safety plan, how can there be a contract? So I'm willing to work really hard on getting a safety plan, but safety plan comes first.
But you're not comfortable voting on Monday night if we don't have this worked out? Is that what you're saying?
Depends on if we have it worked out.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
I've told you, I've said it in public and in private, my absolute number one thing is we will do it safely or we can't do it. We can't, we're messing around. We're dealing with people's lives and the health and safety of the community. We can't cut corners and do things half. We have to think things out and do it right.
Yeah,
No, I don't
agree.
want to get corners either. I think Mike said he would try to get a handle on it, but we ought to know later on this week. But no, I agree, Cinda. I don't want to cut corners, but I do want swimming.
Yep. And I do too, and I agree, Cinda, that these things go hand in hand, and we need the safety plan first. And I don't know if there's a committee meeting before our next board meeting. Could that safety plan be presented and discussed there?
Well, we have audit and finance.
So I just want to jump in real quick. I think.
Wait a minute, hold on. We do have audit and finance. Excuse me, Uche. So we do have audit and finance. We could have something presented there, I suppose, because it is money that we'll be expending on the lifeguards.
Right. And I think it's important that this plan aligns with our other plans.
Yeah, I do too.
I mentioned at the beginning, and I guess that's more what I meant, that they should be, we should be doing the same thing no matter what we're doing, just from a safety standpoint and a liability standpoint. Go ahead, Uta.
Terry, that's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, we've had folks that have spent, coaches and the athletic department. And so there are resources out there. We're not asking someone to reinvent the wheel, but we do have questions, and these questions aren't any different than the questions that we've asked coaches. And I think everybody's, working really hard to think outside the box, keep safety at the forefront. And, we're not necessarily picking on swimming. It just happens to be the topic of the day. But I do think we need to have a plan before we even talk about a contract, because if we don't have a plan, then we don't have swimming.
I'll have a plan over to Mr. Vukovic tomorrow. We'll have it. I mean, we have a plan, but I just don't have it detailed to the manner in which you're talking about. But we can absolutely have what we've been discussing and sketching out to Mr. Vukovic for his review tomorrow.
That's great. Thank you.
Any other comments? If not, to summarize, we'll Dr. Minnick will work on the plan, get it to Mr. Vukovic, and if you can send that out to the board within this week, and then Julia, thank you for allowing it to be an agenda item next Monday night on your committee.
You bet. Thank you.
I do want to say something. I want to say thanks to the junior high staff, because I know that with every one of these plans that we have drawn up, it takes an incredible amount of time. So thank you for trying to get this opportunity for our students.
All right, thank you. We're going to move on to non-agenda items. Mike, is Greg or Jared going to handle most of these?
Yeah, this is where I check out. He'll turn.
Mike, before we move on, while we still have Eric on the phone, on the call, is there any changes in the transporting our students to the YMCA after school? Is that still in place?
No one. I mean, we didn't change anything on our end. Is there something going on? I mean, I should Jared and I, Mike, you're in the line. Is there anything that I'm not aware of?
I just got an email over the weekend here from Eric asking about transportation for after school programs for YMCA. I have not looked into it yet. I'm not sure. It may involve extra costs that the board will probably have to give consent to before we did it. I just don't know what those costs would be or what it's going to look like yet.
Mike, why would there be extra costs in doing something we've done in the past? Can you outline that?
In particular, based on the social distancing on buses, trying to keep the numbers down on buses, especially for the elementary age students. We have a lot of students that utilize busing for that. So there may be costs involved in that, as well as the schedule, the YMCA schedule. If they want them over there at a certain time, it would involve extra busing.
Okay, can you work with Eric over the week and see if you can get this resolved?
Yeah, I've been in contact with Jared about it, and we'll have to hash things out and see what it will all entail. But if there's extra costs, we'd probably need board approval for it.
It sounds like maybe another topic for the audit and finance next Monday, if this is something that's needed sooner than later.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Don't worry, Julie, that you don't have anything to talk about.
We're gonna have a. I'm gonna start selling tickets.
Hey, Mike, this is Eric from the Y. Hey, some of the challenges we've had in the past have been largely due to all of our swim team children showing up at the same time. But due to the current situation, we've had to spread our swim team out into a variety of training times. So the volumes that we've experienced in the past immediately after school are different now. So we have 7 different training groups, of which only a couple of them would be able to participate in after school transportation if that were an option. And each of our training groups only have 25 kids in them. So we're keeping it to, or 24 kids. We're keeping it to 4 kids per lane. So some of the issues that we encountered in the past, where we had 70 kids trying to come to the Y at the same time on those buses, that is not the case this year.
Okay, we can work that out. I know one of the other big issues was bringing the kids from one side of the district across the other, and that takes time. So that would be the other factor involved in that, depending on when your swim team or whatever the program, what time it starts, could determine whether or not we need extra bus for it.
And Mike,
completely understand.
And Eric and Mike, why don't we do this? Take your time, do this right, because I wasn't aware if this was an issue or a concern. And if we can't get it for next week, we always have an academic committee come up in the first of the month as well. I mean, we just need to be better prepared on the same page and make sure this is even being requested of us. So if you guys aren't ready for next week, you can always do academic committee meeting as well. It depends on when you want to start, when when this program wants to start, Eric. And Eric, while you're on the line, real quick before you go, in our emergency plan, we included information about your YMCA program for middle school kids in case of a closure. My question is pretty simple. How many kids can you handle on these days if there were a closure? And we get questions coming to us. How many kids could you handle if we were asked such a question?
Oh, we would have to repurpose some facility spaces, of which we've already done for the middle school program. But if we repurposed all the spaces that we currently aren't using like we normally do, we could probably handle somewhere between 75 and 90 kids a day.
All right. Thank you very much. And Eric, you have my word. Mike, we'll start working out with you. Again, I apologize. I didn't know this was an issue, and I'll get on that with Mike and Jared, and we'll work something out and either bring it next week or the week after. Okay.
And Mike, we do have a backup plan that can handle another 40 kids at an offsite location.
Okay. Sounds good. And what we could do is talk off record, offline, where that is and what that looks like right now. No need to tie up the committee, but I appreciate that, sir.
Thank you, Mike.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Trout on?
Yes, sir. The East Pike entrance update. The contractor has 98% of framing done, all the metal framing inside. He would have had 100%. We had a slight issue with some measurements on a wall for a shower. He finished most of that framing up today. He will complete the rest of the framing tomorrow, hopefully. And so that'll be completely done. The hollow metal frames for the doors will be in on Wednesday, and then they will get those installed. We're waiting for inspection of the electrical and HVAC and the plumbing, and those are all roughed in. The plumbing has already been tested. The ductwork has been, and they were going to clean it, but they're sealed off and wait till after all the drywall is done. So that is ready. The rooftop also was set in place and connected. The roof, as far as the membrane itself, is on. We had a delay for several weeks for the treated lumber that we needed for the perimeter for the fastening. They did get that on. They had to have that before they put the roof on. So that all is completed. They have the fire door operating and running. That's where the students, after the students are in, they close that door to keep the students away from the construction area, plus also keep any dust and noise out. They have temporary doors in place in the front of the building, also to help secure the area inside to keep anybody out of the construction zone that should not be in there. We have look like we still have a delay on storefront. They're working on a ship date for the storefront. It looks like the last notification storefront looks like it should be in the materials were shipped. They build that in place, but they said there could be a delay in the glass as well now. That's currently what I have as far as what is done at the East Pike. Are there any questions?
I have one. Are the delays going to cost us any extra money, or is that all on the contractors?
The contractors, and Jared, I think, was going to speak on it. They are asking that as far as the liquefied damages, that the district waives those because of the COVID and having some very lengthy delays as far as products. Even with which we'll be getting to here shortly, and that's as far as the life skills classroom, we are still waiting for appliances that we've ordered a while ago. So the supply chain for a lot of products, ones they did not anticipate, turned out to be lengthy. And part of that was due to some of the suppliers working on different items, as far as my understanding.
And Mr. Vukovic, I would suggest here that any contract discussions as far as delay damages, any type of, things like that we talk about that in executive session?
Yes, sir. We'll make sure Jared and Greg have a conversation. We can add it. No worries. And Mr. Kerr, what we can do when these things come up, we can also ask Greg to type a memo to the board so they're aware of it, and then we can follow up in the exec session. But that's not a issue at all. I'll follow up tomorrow.
Right. And then I don't have any questions other than what's A mean, the substantial completion extension? Do you have any idea at this point, or it's going to continue?
I'm sorry, you're asking when the end date would be?
Yeah, have they submitted anything, a revised completion date?
I did ask for an updated schedule. I've not received the one that actually incorporated all the trades into it. But what I'm looking at as a possible is second week of November, it appears to be.
And
November 13th, actually.
Yeah, and is the roof on, or they're just getting ready to, since they got the womanized plates in?
The roof is on, but the only thing that's not on as far as the roof would be the soffit and fascia.
Okay. But now they waiting for the soffit and fascia?
They're going to wait for, I believe, the storefronts to have everything up on it so they can bring everything and wrap it all around.
Okay.
And they also do have the canopy is connected. I forgot to mention that. And they also have the concrete. It's all, I believe all the concrete is poured currently at this time.
So most of the weather-related work is done, it sounds like. So if the weather would turn bad, in October, we're watertight and weather-tight.
Yes.
It may be, Greg, I know you have lots of pictures of East Pike, so maybe is it also a good follow-up with an update would be sending the board some of your pictures.
Okay. I forwarded a few to Randy O'Neill earlier in case anybody has some questions. I didn't know if he wanted to put those up, but we can send those to the board.
Yeah, why don't we just send them as an email instead of so that everybody can take the time to look at them.
Not a problem. I'll make sure that, and you're right, I probably have a good 70, 80 pictures.
Okay, anything on number one? If not, we can move to number two.
East Pike roof repair. The repair was done last week, the week of the 14th. They did not contact me with any surprises or anything additional. So the the roof repair is complete at this time.
That's really good to hear. Again, getting it done before the weather turns. Any questions on that? If not, number three.
Okay, the high school life skills and chairlift. The chairlift is in this Saturday. They are going to come and put the handrail up. It's going to require some welding, and they're going to do that in the off hours, just to make it easier on. We don't want anybody in that area while we're welding because of arc flashes and also any smoke that could be associated with that. And they're going to have to do a little bit of grinding, so they will be taking care of their that part of the project. Once they get that done, then we will be able to paint that, and then the chairlift will be completely ready at that point. The life skills classroom itself, everything was completed, and we went through and created a punch list, and so we're now waiting for punch list items to be rectified at this point. We had some that one's going to require a lead time of several weeks because it's requiring that they do some retile work. So they have to wait for the tile to arrive.
Okay, any questions on number three? Number four, I'll just say something real quick here. There was a question of whether all the lights could be turned out in the junior high locker room. And Greg had sent me some pictures showing that some of the lights stay on all the time. So I forwarded those to the person that asked the question, and they were satisfied. So, any other questions on that? Number 5, just thought it'd be a good idea to hear a brief summary of where we're at with busing as far as cleaning. Are there any issues? Anything like that, Mr. Travis?
Year started off actually pretty well. Things are getting settled in pretty nicely. Drivers are cleaning their buses twice daily, and we are the contractor has been working on doing deep cleans when buses are not in service. Yeah, things have I can't say enough about how well the contractor, the drivers are doing, trying to keep up with the multiple schedules that are going on with kids at the junior and senior high going on different days, and sixth graders going 4 days, and elementary going 5 days, trying to maintain their schedules on each individual bus and knowing who to pick up and when to pick up. They're doing a great job.
Okay, thanks. Any questions on busing?
You say they do the deep cleaning when the buses aren't in service. About how often is that?
We're trying to do it. We're trying to do it once a week.
Thank you.
Okay, sounds good, Mr. Travis. Thank you for everything you're doing, and I know all the bus drivers I see have their masks on, so, and just not in our school district either. So that's good. Number 6, I know that there was some interest or discussion, I should say, and it's in the news, this ultraviolet lights in the HVAC system as far as killing the virus. So I know that Mr. Trott, I think looked into this, and Jared, so don't know if it pertains to us or not.
Yes, I've looked into the ultraviolet light. As a matter of fact, that goes back to roughly 10 years ago. And there were some items in it that alarmed me as far as safety and upkeep cost from it. Now they have come up with, and it's still an option that if the board ever wanted to do, we can look into that one as well further. There's another one that's called needlepoint bipolar ionization, and that's something that kind of, I guess, has been a very hot topic right now, as far as the ability to clean and help reduce or get rid of the virus in areas. I did do a real quick calculation on what it would cost to do our buildings. Now, currently, when I said quick, I like to emphasize that, yes, I think that that's something, it would be nice to be able to do either one of those two. I did do, like I said, a quick analysis. I do not have information on like the junior high and senior high as far as more specifics, because I am not sure how many would be required for the amount of air handlers. We have significant amount of air handlers at those two buildings. Where at Horseman, we have 2 in the multi-purpose room, and the other elementaries, the only ones we would have would be at East Pike, and that would be for the current administration offices and also the principal and guidance / nurses area. So not including those ones, I came up with a quick calculation. If you did the needlepoint bipolar ionization, like I said, this is without air handlers, was a little over 170,000. The ultraviolet light was close to 260,000. Those are without air handlers, and a good portion of the junior and senior high was not included in those figures.
Greg, what would happen if you restricted your you're looking at the areas where kids are without masks, and concentrating on those areas first. Would that change your budget number much?
I'm not sure where those areas would be.
Well, be like cafeterias, gymnasiums, locker rooms.
Okay. Yes, it definitely will significantly change because that's a much smaller controlled area.
Yeah, it seemed like it would have a better effect there than, and there also is a supply issue on those also.
Yeah, there's a for the. Let me look at my notes here. For the UV, it's roughly 20-week wait. For the bipolar ionization, it's roughly 4 weeks or a little bit less. It also depends on the size. You're looking at large air handlers. What I was looking at were classrooms where we had the students in the areas for a greater portion of the day. But I can look at the ones without masks. That makes perfect sense as far as looking at those areas.
Maybe the life skills rooms would also be fall into that group. But that would get it down to a number that we might be able to swallow and have the biggest effect.
I will work with. I have 3 different vendors that I've reached out to. Ones that do mainly schools actually and hospitals. One did suggest he said he wouldn't use the bipolar ionization in any labs that are growing anything. He said well, it's funny because he said they have to use the UV for those ones. He said they are currently doing a lab, and that came up as a very problematic, as you can just imagine.
Yeah.
Well, I guess before we move that forward, let's get some group discussion. Barb, you have any comments, questions?
I need to learn more about. I just need to research some more about bipolar ionization. It's the first time I've ever heard of it. If Greg, if you could write down and maybe send to the board later exactly the locations where it could be. It's just first time hearing it, so.
That's not a problem. I have a bunch of information. A lot of it was forwarded to me, some new information today that they had from research and sales. I will get that sent out to you tomorrow.
That'd be great, Greg.
And I guess I'm going to say, my first question is, do we need this? And I don't have the answer to that.
It's an interesting question. If we could clean the air in our buildings, all of our viruses are going to be better controlled. It's not a guarantee like anything else we're doing, but I'm thinking that we should seriously consider this as a safety issue. It will help on all the health issues that we experience in the school buildings. So it's not a shot in the dark. These are proven technologies. I don't know much about the bipolar ionization, Greg. I know more about the ultraviolet, and it's a technology that we should at least look at pretty hard. It should have a positive effect on the quality of air inside our buildings.
And just not for COVID-19, it would be other viruses.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the problems is we don't know what kills COVID-19, but we do know what kills cold germs and other viruses. So worst case scenario is it helps us with our fall infections.
Yeah. So does it help with asthma and other?
Well, again, it's going to be subtle, but if you take the viruses and the mold and mildews out of the air, that's going to improve our air quality tremendously.
And I don't know, Jared, uh, do we have any of this CARE Act money left, and would this qualify?
It would no doubt qualify, Mr. Kerr, but as of right now, between PPE and some learning software to help kids who needed to, not only our kids if we went virtual, but the kids who are virtual, we bought software to help them. The roughly $225,000 grant that we got is gone at this point.
Okay, and maybe we could, by the time we're ready, you know, if we do consider this and we get to a point, maybe there'll be a phase 2 grant. So, any other comments from other board members? Joey, I'm going to ask, because this, you know, since this would be an expenditure, is this something that the Audit and Finance Committee, you know, at some point it's going to have to go there?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a pretty big dollar amount. My feeling would be that it fits into this whole restructuring and re-strategizing on our deferred maintenance list that we talked about at our last Audit and Finance Committee meeting. You know, where are the priorities? Because in this age of COVID and technology, I think we have to keep that list refreshed as much as possible. So I don't know where it would sit on the big spectrum, but we can only do so many projects at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
Is this something we want Greg to look into more?
Absolutely.
I think we should look into it, but we should also make sure that we do our research, because just sitting here quickly looking up some articles, they still don't know for certain what the effects of the UV light are on the COVID. And right now that's our super priority. But going forward, if we do this, we really need to be aware of the maintenance issues, the replacement costs for doing the bulbs, how often they have to be replaced, and so forth. So on the ultraviolet water systems that I'm familiar with, those replacement bulbs are fairly expensive and have to be replaced a lot more often than people ever believe. So I think there are a lot of future costs that we need to take into account. But I'd love to have some more information on it.
I would too, Cinda. I just think there's a certain point where the local taxpayers can't bear the burden of this, and there's going to have to be federal and state grants. If this is what the consensus is throughout the state that we need to do, but thank you.
That's a good point, Joey, and I agree. I think it's worth moving forward in a research mode, and then putting some options together with estimated costs. So, is that okay, Greg?
Yes, I will go ahead and get additional information I'll send out, and I will continue. I will get a few costs on the areas that Mr. Harley he pointed out. The one thing I do have is dependent on, this is for the UV, dependent on the amount of runtime that you use them for in the unit ventilators and or air handlers. After 12 months on a fairly aggressive amount of hours, they didn't give you exactly how many, you start to see a diminished kill for or time that they do work. And within 2 years, they do recommend that you change all those bulbs. So a 2-year maximum would be the lifetime for a bulb, and it's dependent on some may only be 12 months.
Okay.
And then I would assume, since we're dealing with COVID and we've got all the ventilation rates and everything turned up as high as we can, that we would end up with less than 2 years as a possible scenario.
Well, airflow doesn't have actually a bearing on either one as far as length of time for any maintenance, but it is the total runtime, and you are correct. We are not just running them from 7:30 to 2:30. anymore. We have definitely extended our runtime from, before the students get there to just, to the very end of the day. Actually, they're not shut down very many hours. And that's actually going to be sort of a part of the conversation coming up in our next topic, the last topic, number 8, and that is the ESCO report. They also went notified that if we do plan on running for an extended period of time, that we do notify them, because we're going to be not within our boundaries and our contractual hours that we had pretty much so agreed on when we set up the ESCO. But we will catch that briefly.
Okay. And whenever if you could put this together in a matrix format with all the areas that this could be retrofitted to, and then have a cost associated with each of those areas, then the board can play around with that matrix. All right, thanks. Number 7, just wanted a quick update on, we good with all the building cleaning supplies, etc.
Yeah, our supply chain, for the most part, is where we want it to be. We still have, I guess I won't mention the name of the company, but there is one particular company we're waiting for the product. We have the dispensers, we have the pedestal stands. They kind of got caught a little bit off guard when this happened. They were in the process of building a new plant, and as soon as they get the plant up and running, I guess the product will be available very quickly. So we're hoping to have that, but we still have enough of the instant hand sanitizer as far as like in the classrooms and hallways, any place we need that we have gallon refills. We have half-gallon containers. If we find a classroom or an area.
Can I get my lunch for free today? No. I had 2 cups of soup and
Okay.
30.
And,
Hey, Barb, your mic's on.
Sorry, threw me off there. We're waiting for, I believe, 2 nurse dividers yet. Those have not come in. We have the other, all the other products seem to be in a pretty decent supply now. We thought we might have a difficult time with one of our main disinfectants, but just when I thought we could have switched to a different one, which we have many other ones, the main one that we do use has just changed to a 1-minute kill time, which was nice. And that's our QT3. And our staff loves that product for cleaning. As far as I know, everything's going great with the cleaning. I imagine there are places we have to tweak. That should go without being said, because no matter how hard, there's going to be something you might be missing or we're lax on. And once we discover that we do have an area like that, we will address or have addressed already, and try to take care of all the needs to protect our students and staff and all of our workers included.
All right, thanks, Greg. And there was no doubt in my mind that you and your staff would step up and take care of this. But any questions on number 7? Not hearing anything. The last one, the ESCO report.
Yes, Mr. Kerr. I received that last week from Constellation Energy. It is the annual report that they provide the district since the completion of the ESCO project back 2013, 2014. So this is our 6th year. It is a 167-page document, which the attachment is there as part of the agenda. Excuse me. I'm not going to go through all 167 pages tonight. Anybody can feel free to go through that. I don't want to hold us up any longer tonight. I will say the year 6 report, we did, according to the report, achieve our savings. The guarantee that was set when the project was put in place was $355,000 in savings. According to the report, we achieved savings of almost $383,000. It is the 6th year in a row of the reports that we have achieved the guaranteed savings all 6 years. I would just kind of as a brief summary for people who may not be familiar with it, the biggest savings does come through lighting. And just as an example, I pulled out some information today. Back in 2010, 2011 school year, our energy bill back then was $480,000 in electricity. At the end of the last closed school year, 1920, our energy bill was $385,000. I know that wasn't a normal year, so I pulled out 1819, which was our last normal year. Our energy bill that year was $434,000. So, over a course of almost 10 years, we're still not at the same electricity that we were paying 10 years ago. I'd say the project at this point has pretty much done what we paid for it to do.
Jared, is that cumulative? When you say the 380, is that how? Are you saying in one? You're not saying in 1 year.
Yes, in 1 year, that is a savings, and that's what those energy projects are supposed to do. That's roughly right now what our bond payment is on that project. So the project is set to pretty much pay for itself through savings in energy.
So is this, what's the best year we've saved? Do you know?
Let me just flip over.
You can get back.
No, of the 6 years, this is the highest. Year 6 is 300, like I said, almost 383. Year 3 was 379. So it's, pretty close to, it's always, the lowest was 306. In year 1, the highest is 382. So it's always, right within about $80,000 of each other.
And when do those bonds, how many more years do we have on them?
I don't have that right in front of me. I would say they were probably the last set to be paid off before the recent bond. So I would say probably 2027.
Oh, okay. That sounds about right. Wow, that's impressive. Thank you.
Any other?
Jared, we also, since we entered into the ESCO project, we actually have added more air handlers to the senior high school itself. We did the old library. We switched that over to, instead of just unit ventilators and some conduction, to 2 larger air handlers, and we added up in the upper commons airflow there and some other mechanical equipment. So we actually have done a little bit better job than I thought we were going to by adding those areas, and Constellation hasn't even seen actually a rise in anything. I think so they're happy about that.
Any questions for Jared or Greg? Well, Greg, what you mentioned earlier, was that, do we need to talk about that anymore?
Not really. It's just, it's on their radar that anybody that has been, well, not just an ESCO project, anybody in general, they are running all their air handling systems and exhaust fans at a much greater runtime than we ever have before.
So is it gonna break our contract? They just want notified of it, but are they gonna find a loophole in this contract or something that will hurt us? Or?
Well, I think what they're saying is, if we don't meet our guaranteed savings, they pretty much still want to go on record saying, well, you willingly changed all your parameters. Please do not hold us responsible and ask for them to pay the difference if we don't make it. It basically is what they're asking for.
Okay. All right. Okay, if there's no questions, anything else for the good of the order tonight? If not, thank you all.
Thanks, Terry.
All right, have a good evening.
Good night.
Good night. Thanks, Mike.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.